Thank you, Tony,
Thank you
for
so
that
much.
opening.
Thank you, John.
Welcome, everyone, to our Chartres community call, which we convene every month, year in and year out. and have done so for 20 years. This is our 20th anniversary year for Ubiquity University, making pilgrimage to Chartres in France. I want to welcome you in the spirit of all of our mothers. I know that Mother's Day is being celebrated in the United States and not elsewhere. Each country and different parts of the world have different dates upon which they celebrate motherhood, but it's a very precious commemoration if you think about it. You know, you think about most holidays, Christmas, Ramadan, Yom Kippur, uh, the various holidays, they're all sectarian in one way or another. Mother's Day and Father's Day are the only celebrations that are universal, that pertain to every single person in the world. We all have mothers. We all have fathers. So on this day, I just want to celebrate and express love and appreciation for all of our mothers and the grandmothers and all the people who've given birth in their lives to the next generation, which sustains our humanity, our species over time. We have only literally a few weeks left before we gather back in Chartres, the 6th through the 12th of July of this year. I hope that you're all making plans to come. Those of you who haven't registered, we hope you will register. We'll be celebrating our sixth of our liberal arts, the liberal art of Geometrica. We're doing so with two very, very special people. The lead faculty will be Veda Austin. She's been on both Humanity Rising and our Chartres community calls a number of times. She's the foremost researcher in the world on the living intelligence of water. And she's going to be contemplating with us the living geometry of water and how water is as sacred geometry establishes itself as a portal to the ancestors, to other dimensions, has the capability of expressing itself intelligibly through what she calls hydroglyphs, which is a revolutionary breakthrough in our understanding of the intelligence of Gaia. That water that we use and drink every day is conscious, compassionate, prophetic, therapeutic, and available for us to enhance our spiritual development. We're also going to be joined by Bertie Jaworski, who's one of the world's leading remote viewers. And she is a partner at Ubiquity University in our extraterrestrial studies program. She's an extraordinary being. I was just with her in Taos last weekend, where we engaged in remote viewing by day, and then we were communing with the extraterrestrials by night. It was an extraordinary experience. So Bertie Jaworski is going to be joining Veda Austin, and of course Banav Shea and Kaylin and hopefully Heather Ash, Margot Borden, and others who are the core faculty to engage in an initiatory process of ritual and ceremony and teachings and stargazing and journeys to the mother tree, to the musical accompaniment of Tony, who you just heard at the beginning of our program today. So it's going to be very exciting. And we're very hopeful that all of you will join us because it'll be a momentous occasion that will be transformational and hopefully enlarge your soul. Today, as we celebrate Mother's Day, we are very, very blessed to have someone who we all revere as a world treasure and to introduce her and make her own comments on what is in store for Chartres in July. I want to welcome Banafsheh Sayad, the co-director of the Chartres Academy with me. Banafsheh, welcome. I turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you. And thank you to Tony Khalife, who opened the session for us so beautifully with his prayer invocation, the musical invocation. Happy Mother's Day to everyone, regardless of where you live and if you do consider this Mother's Day or not. And also to all lovers of the Great Mother. We are all here as her children, revering her, adoring her. It's also a very special day for me as I have finally finished my book that will be published by Sounds True in the early 2026 on embodied spirituality through dance. I will share more about that as time goes on. But as Jim said, we're very excited today to welcome truly a world treasure, Anne Baring. Anne Baring is a wisdom keeper. She's a Jungian analyst and author of seminal books, very, very important books, Myth of the Goddess with Jules Cashford and The Dream of the Cosmos. Anne has been with us in Chartres. She's honored us at Chartres a few times. We've been blessed by her presence. Anne has a new book that I am very excited about, and I'm sure you will as well. I'm going to share the cover of this book. It's called Divine Wisdom and the Holy Spirit, The Forgotten Feminine Face of God. This book is available. The information of it will be put in the chat. But I would like to now invite Anne to speak to us and share her amazing wisdom with us. Thank you, Anne, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Banafsheh. It's lovely to be with you and remember the feeling of Chartres that I always have with you. So I say good morning or good evening to everyone. It's lovely to be with you. Today is Mother's Day in the United States. But in honoring our own mothers, we may remember the inconsolable grief of mothers in current conflicts, specifically Ukrainian and Russian mothers, who together have lost over 1 million beloved sons to the fearful defilement of war. Volodymyr Zelensky and Western leaders await the agreement of President Putin to a ceasefire and have been photographed in the Cathedral of Santa Sofia, or Holy Wisdom, in Kyiv. India and Pakistan, each now a nuclear power, have entered a dangerous escalation of hostilities. When prior to their separation in 1947, Hindu and Muslim lived side by side for centuries. What are we to make of the time in which we are living? Are we aware that our future survival may depend on the choices we make now? Why have we forgotten the ancient shamanic teachings about the sacredness of life that have been preserved by the indigenous people? And the commandment in the book of Exodus, thou shalt not kill. I have just published my final book called Divine Wisdom and the Holy Spirit, the Forgotten Feminine Face of God, which gives an overview of changing cosmologies during the last 25,000 years and concludes that nothing will change in our behavior unless and until we change our outworn image of God. The book explains when, where, and how Western civilization lost the feminine face of God and what the effects of this loss have been. It is an attempt to describe the change of consciousness that is desperately needed if we are to overcome our addiction to war. It describes how, after 2 great cataclysms which destroyed previously existing great civilizations, including that of Atlantis, the earliest image of deity was the Great Mother, and how this image changed some 4,000 years ago to the Great Father, marking the beginning of the patriarchal era. The loss of the Hebrew goddess in 623 BCE was the event that severed the umbilical cord that had connected spirit with nature. With the loss of the goddess, nature was no longer seen as sacred, and this led eventually to our attempt to dominate and control nature, as we have done in the past 100 years or so. The titles of the Hebrew goddess were Divine Wisdom and the Holy Spirit, and she was the consort of Yahweh. Like the great goddesses of Egypt and Sumer, she was named Queen of Heaven, and her teaching was said to be like the light of the dawn. She was worshipped as the tree of life, a tree that connected the invisible and visible dimensions, the great above with the great below. The Deuteronomist priests, who, on the orders of a King Josiah, obliterated all trace of the goddess in 623 BC, gave Eve the former title of the goddess, Mother of all living. They also created the myth of the fall, giving Eve the former title of the goddess, Mother of all living. This myth was the origin of the persecution of women that has endured to our own day, and the origin of a false view of the sinfulness of our nature, which required the sacrificial death of the Son of God to save us. Although it was the creation of an ambitious group of priests, this myth was received as divine revelation and has remained so ever since. Christianity took its monotheistic image of God from Judaism, together with the myth of the fall, which it made use of in its creation of the myth of Jesus as the only Son of God at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. For some time now in the West, we have been living through a phase of the death of God, with the vacuum filled by the ideology of scientific materialism, which has even led to the idea of transhumanism, which is a dreadful prospect for our future. I speak about this in one of the chapters of the book. The divine feminine survived in what is called the wisdom tradition, which included the mystical Jewish tradition of Kabbalah, known as the voice of the dove, and the marvelous wisdom texts of the book of Proverbs and the Apocrypha. I trace the transmission of the wisdom tradition from two areas, from the pre-Socratic philosophers of Greece to the later Gnostics, and secondly, from the first temple in Jerusalem to the Alexandrian Gnostics, the Essenes, and the joint mission of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, who were both Essenes. In the two chapters on the Essenes and Mary Magdalene, I draw on extraordinary channeled material to amplify the orthodox sources. With the persecution of the Gnostics in the 4th century and the wholesale destruction of their gospels by two emperors, Constantine and Theodosius I, the wisdom tradition disappeared for many centuries. It resurfaced amazingly in 12th century France in the image of the Holy Grail and the many images and shrines of the Black Madonna, and in the building of the magnificent Gothic cathedrals. How it was transmitted is still a mystery, but I believe it must have originated with Mary Magdalene's presence in southwestern France during the 1st century, bringing with her from Palestine the Essene wisdom tradition and her own priceless gospel, and teaching it widely there for some 20 years. Following her death, an unknown group of people transmitted the wisdom tradition in France for 750 years before it surfaced again during the 12th century, inspiring the building of the great Gothic cathedrals that were financed by the Knights Templar. These were all dedicated to Our Lady. To the people, this dedication meant the Virgin Mary, but to the initiates of the wisdom tradition, including the master masons of Chartres, it meant Mary Magdalene, whom they saw as the embodiment of Sophia, or divine wisdom. The Cathedral of Chartres could be mystically understood to embody the lost First Temple and to restore the image of the banished Queen of Heaven, divine wisdom, and the Holy Spirit. The 12th century saw the resurgence of the wisdom tradition that had been forced underground in the 4th century with the eradication of the Gnostics. It saw the rise of the magnificent Gothic cathedrals in France, situated in different towns of the north of France, in such a way as to reflect the shape of the constellation Virgo. It saw the founding of the Courts of Love by Eleanor of Aquitaine in the city of Poitiers, and her daughter, Marie de France, in the city of Troyes, east of Paris, which had a huge influence on raising the status of women. It saw the dissemination of the Grail legends, a new mythology expressed in stories, poetry, and song, and carried the length and breadth of Europe by the troubadours. The Holy Grail was the secret symbol of the forgotten feminine aspect of God, the sacred feminine womb or vessel, eternally overflowing with life, light, and love. Her other names then were Sophia, or divine wisdom. Many of the Templar knights were her devotees. The Holy Grail opened the heart of medieval Europe to the quest for the forgotten feminine aspect of the divine. As the image of sacred vessel or precious stone, it changed the face of Europe in the 12th century, spreading the concept of courtly love, chivalry, and a profound change in men's attitude to women and towards the existence of a higher, invisible dimension of reality. The 12th century saw the flourishing of the schools of Chartres and Paris, which drew enlightened men to teach in those cities, to create and develop what could be called civilization. It saw the rise of the Order of the Knights Templar and the streaming of pilgrims across Europe to sacred sites like Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain and to the Holy Land. It saw the spread of the mystical Jewish teaching of Kabbalah in northern Spain and southwestern France, teaching that I believe originated long before in the first temple in Jerusalem. It saw priceless manuscripts transported from Toledo in Muslim Spain to the Cathedral of Saint-Denis in Paris, then translated from Arabic and Greek into Latin. It saw the Cathar Church of the Holy Spirit, or Church of Sophia, established in 1167 in southwestern France, whose teachings spread rapidly over the whole region of the Languedoc, threatening the power of the Church of Rome, which in 1096 had inaugurated the First Crusade. Finally, it saw the activation of the shrines of the Black Madonna along the pilgrim routes where these majestic statues had existed for centuries as centers of healing and esoteric teaching. After the destruction of the Order of the Knights Templar in the early 14th century and the devastating impact of the Black Death, the wisdom tradition had to go underground again, transmitted secretly by Kabbalists and alchemists who kept alive the image of the divine feminine, whom they named the Shekinah and Sophia. All this is to give you the background story that led to the building of Chartres Cathedral, one of the most sacred places in Europe, sacred to the Virgin Mary, and long before her to the Druidic Great Mother. Chartres now gleams with the beautiful pale ivory stone used in its original construction. As you enter the cathedral, you may, as I did each time I visited it, find tears welling unbidden into your eyes in response to its extraordinary impact. Soul and body respond to the subtle harmony created by the sacred geometry surrounding you, incorporated into every stone, arch, and pillar. The very purpose of Chartres was to draw those treading its stone-flagged floor from the visible world to the invisible one, helping them to penetrate through the veil of matter to the divine ground. The labyrinth laid out on the floor of the cathedral symbolizes the pathway through life in this world as a conscious preparation for life in the eternal world, whose presence is indicated by the great rose window on the western facade. When the shape of the rose window is laid over the labyrinth, it matches its dimensions exactly, emphasizing the relationship between them. The labyrinth itself acts like a vortex, causing the pilgrim to lose his habitual orientation as he or she follows the multiple turns and folds of the path to the central six-petaled white rose, whose dimensions exactly match the rosette at the center of the rose window, which holds the figure of Christ. Chartres Cathedral was and is a revelation, a hymn to the divine feminine. The building of Chartres was part of the stupendous effort of constructing 80 cathedrals, as well as many abbeys, monasteries, and churches in less than 100 years. Chartres was designed to be a revelation by the brilliant master masons who planned, built and completed it within the space of 26 years. Their names are unknown. They call themselves masters of the compasses. This focus on a spectacular program of building required the collaboration of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. The nameless men who designed Chartres gave the 12th century culture of France and Europe a new image of man as radiant with divinity, the more so as he was able to bring such marvels into being. In exalting the image of the Virgin and making her the focus of their creation, they rescued the feminine from the contempt into which it had fallen, and they redeemed nature from its association with sin, releasing it into a glorious affirmation of its beauty in fruit, flower, and foliage, presided over by the green man. How, you may wonder, was such a marvelous Chartres ever created? How were the enlightened individuals brought together and the skills developed that could design the form, carve, lift, and arrange such enormous amounts of stone in such exquisite harmony and proportion? How did they come to incorporate the three great innovations which gave to Chartres its revolutionary structure, the pointed arch, the flying buttress, and the ribbed vault? And how could flimsy wooden scaffolding hold the tremendous weight of the stones that had to be hauled into place with ropes that could fray and break under pressure, stones that fitted together with incredible precision and very little mortar? The inhabitants of Chartres and many thousands of pilgrims helped to draw the heavy wagons that transported the huge quantities of stone and wood required for building the cathedral. But think of the number of builders, stonemasons, carpenters, stained glass window makers required to erect even one cathedral. Where did they come from, already qualified for this prestigious work? Who trained and supervised them? How were they fed daily through the arduous years of building work together with all the pilgrims thronging the town? It must have been a stupendous effort on thousands of people joining in with it. It is known that Muslim artisans contributed to the marvelous blue of the stained glass windows, who arranged for their transportation from Palestine to France. All this required vision, organization, and huge amounts of money, which was provided by the knights, some of whom had spent several years in Jerusalem in the century before the building of Chartres had begun, where they would have encountered Islamic geometry and architecture, as well as Sufi teachers. The pointed arches of Chartres suggest Islamic influence. Chartres Cathedral was designed, as you know, as the dwelling place on the earth of the Virgin Mary, the Queen of Heaven, but it was also a grail, a container of ancient mysteries and the numinous presence of the Holy Spirit. The rose had long been a symbol of the goddess and divine wisdom, and the whole cathedral with its sublime 3 rose windows is a hymn to wisdom. The way of the rose was and still is the way of the heart, the way of the shamans and visionaries who preserved this ancient wisdom tradition that had from time immemorial connected us to transcendent levels of reality and opened our soul to the awareness of our divinity and immortality, as well as to the sacredness of the entire cosmos. In this interlude between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, the image of the divine feminine is returning. She, the cornerstone that the builders rejected during the age of Pisces, is initiating a crucial new phase in our evolution, urging us to discover a new ethic of responsibility towards the planet and each other, bringing us a new vision of the sacredness and unity of life. Wisdom, justice, beauty, harmony, love and compassion, and the impulse to help and heal are the qualities that have been traditionally identified with the divine feminine. Yet she is also the irresistible power that destroys old forms and brings new ones into being, the inspiration of the love in action that is needed to transform a culture that is radically out of touch with its soul, having lost all awareness that it has a soul. We stand now at the entrance of a new astrological age, named as the age of the Holy Spirit, foreseen 1,000 years ago by a monk called Joachim of Fiore in southern Italy. It is the age when the archetype of the divine feminine could return to heal the world and restore balance to our patriarchal culture and its deluded pursuit of power, and elevate our consciousness to awareness of our essential divinity and oneness, and the divinity and oneness of all cosmic life. In this book, I wanted to present a new image of humanity and to offer a new story, a story which gives us an image of God that accords with the idea of the unity of all life offered by quantum physics, and a new image of ourselves as divine and immortal beings, part of the deity that we've been worshipping for so long, for over 2,000 years. Nothing will change in our habits of behavior unless and until we change the image of God held by the three patriarchal religions. And that is a very tall order, as you know. That is why we need a new story and a new image of God. I have chosen to write about the neglected feminine aspect of God because it is an essential aspect of our understanding of life and of ourselves, essential to the completion of our nature and the healing of our decadent, unbalanced, and even insane culture. We have been worshipping an image of God which is incomplete, lacking the presence, lacking the presence of the Divine Mother. The Grail of the Feminine is urging us to open our heart to the revelation of all cosmic life as a divine unity. For those awakened to this vision, to be born a human being is to be born into a world lit by an invisible radiance, ensouled by divine presence, graced and sustained by incandescent light and love. To end, I would like to pay tribute to Banafsheh and Jim for the immense amount of work they have put into the Chartres gatherings over many years now. They have activated and maintained the connection with the original school of wisdom in Chartres that still offers a structure in which human consciousness can flourish and evolve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and that was incredible. So many threads of wisdom that you brought for us, and I think we all look forward to reading your book. Thank you for sharing from your book. I feel what you were pointing out to, especially creating the balance between the the two faces of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, is something that we experience when we go to Chartres, when we really spend time in the cathedral and open ourselves to coming into balance. I feel that cathedral, one of the energies that the cathedral really activates in us is this balance between the two, because we see everywhere, in every corner of the cathedral, we see this relationship between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and the invitation to embody these energies and to live this unity. So thank you so much for what you give us, what you've given us for so many years, given our world. And I want to know if people have any questions for Anne. I'd also like to invite Jim back on.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. I'm intrigued by your remarks today, and I would wonder how you would weave Mary Magdalene into the resurgence of the feminine aspect of divinity as we're experiencing it today. Because I think, as you've pointed out, there's a real link that Mary Magdalene provided between what took place in the Middle East and what then was brought into Europe, which then flowered beginning in the 11th, 12th centuries, and has continued to mystically inform spirituality to the present day, and is in fact, as you know, experiencing a renaissance. So I'd love to just to hear your comments on the presence of Mary Magdalene today.
Well, many women have been very attracted and have written about Mary Magdalene, as you know. I can't remember all their authors, but certainly Cynthia Bujold is one of them. I think that she is returning as the archetype of the feminine. Women are longing. Women are half the population of the world, literally. I've checked it out. There's only a million difference between men and women. So women have been left out for so long. And Mary Magdalene was ditched by Christianity, I'm afraid, and was not included, although she was, I now know through the work of Anine van der Meer, that she was actually married to Jesus and that she was Mary of Bethany. There's no question or doubt about that. It's been proven in Anine's books. So that in itself is a complete change. We have a sacred marriage right at the beginning of Christianity. And her work is brought to life by these channeled messages, which I think when you read the book, you'll be fascinated by them. I was overwhelmed by them to read what they were saying, because they brought to life the fact that there were two groups around Jesus. There was the man's group, which I think there were actually 3 levels of men and 3 levels of women. And the women's group was to really focus on the divine transcendent relationship, whereas the men's duty was to go out into the world and teach. But they were so beautifully combined, these two circles, really, of men and women, right at the beginning of Christianity. But all that went out of the window when Christianity got going, and as you know. But this is fascinating new material brought by Anine van der Meer, but also about the loss of the goddess by a wonderful biblical scholar called Margaret, I've forgotten her name, my memory is going. Anyway, she's in the book, and she has shown how the goddess was married to Yahweh in the beginning, and then she got ditched, and we were left only with the male god. So that's fascinating in itself. So it's a kind of a mistake that was made then. Anyway, I think Mary Magdalene is coming back, definitely, and she needs to be recognized as the consort of Jesus. They had a mission together, which these messages speak about, channel messages speak about. And their mission was to start the evolutionary return to the divine, having descended to the Roman Empire was the lowest point, really, so to speak, of the involutionary thing. You'll have to read it because I can't explain it. It's too complicated, but it's absolutely fascinating. And it restores the feminine and the masculine together as a sacred marriage. There was this sacred marriage at the beginning, which had been lost completely owing to the repression of Mary Magdalene by the Christian fathers. You know a great deal about the Christian fathers, far more than I do, and the reasons for their rejection of Mary Magdalene was because of partly because of Peter, because Peter and Mary Magdalene didn't get on. Peter did not like Mary Magdalene and did his best to get rid of her, but she stuck it out, so to speak. So, and Jesus did want Peter to found the physical church, but he wanted Mary Magdalene to hold the inner teaching. And so there was supposed to be always the inner teaching and the outer teaching together. But Christianity lost the inner teaching, except with the Gnostics and the church, the school of Chartres. It lost what it should have had. So I find that absolutely fascinating. And I urge people to read my book because I think they will find it fascinating as well.
Yes.
And educational.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret.
Now, Zinglo Chen is wanting you to expand a little bit this notion that you've developed with all your works of the Divine Mother beyond sort of Christianity and what evolved in Europe to connections with other world cultures.
Well, India, for instance, has several images of the goddess, marvelous images, and always has had for the last 5,000 years. It is absolutely saturated with both gods and goddesses. China has the image of Kuan Yin and all the wisdom of the Taoist tradition, which is essentially feminine because it's all about relations with nature. It's all about the balance of yin and yang. So we have a goddess in China, Kuan Yin. We have many goddesses in India. Durga is one of them. I can't remember all of them, but the beautiful names, beautiful qualities. And the Indians have never ceased to worship them. They still worship them to this day. They've never lost that appreciation. And I'm afraid what happened was, too, which I explain in the book, that for 3,000 years there was a wonderful culture in Europe, in what's called Old Europe, discovered by Maria Gimbutas, which was for 3,500 years it endured, and it worshipped the goddess mainly, but also it had men and women in equilibrium with each other. They worked together to create their culture, and they were the most marvelous craftsmen. It extended all the way up to the edge of the Russia today, included Ukraine. And that wonderful culture was gradually infiltrated by people coming down from the Russian steppes, who brought with them the culture of the patriarchy. They brought with them male gods, they brought war chariots, horses, and gradually they overcame the feminine culture, more feminine culture of the old Europe. And they moved eastwards all the way to India, across Persia, towards Afghanistan and India, all the while establishing the patriarchal order. And that was the beginning of the huge change, which 4,000 years we actually had as patriarchy. But it was at a long preparation, a long gestation, because of these invasions. It was infiltrations rather than invasions, I'm afraid. Got it wrong, the name there. So it's all fascinating. This is all in my book, including the destruction of the earliest civilizations in these great cataclysms, which I've put into the book because I think it's important people know about them, that this happened, and we've been building ever since 9000 BC, we've been building a new civilization or new culture on the ruins of the old, without knowing that we were on the ruins of the old. But Plato said we had to begin again as children after the destruction of Atlantis. And that's what we've done. But what are we going to do now? We have a choice. And this is what I describe in my book. We can't go on with war as we have been doing. We have to find a way of bringing it to an end. And the terrible suffering and the terrible weapons, the indescribable harm to nature that comes through these weapons. We can just see it in the war in Ukraine, the destruction of the trees, of the land, of the soil, and the wheat that is set on fire and things like that. It's all an abomination. Maybe I better shut up now.
No, I think that's a powerful statement. I mean, we're bearing witness to it all around the world. And I'm just wondering if we could just deepen what you were just saying. And I'm sure you touched on it in your book about, given what our situation is, do you recommend particular practices or orientations of thought or meditation that can enhance our understanding of the feminine?
I think just contemplating the image of the feminine, not worshipping the goddess. We don't need more goddess worship. That phase is over. But to understand what the feminine is, which is about relationship, caring, compassion, which comes into many people's lives because they're caring for their children, their animals, for other people, etc. And this is something that's innate in human beings, but hasn't been really brought out as a very important faculty that we carry, the capacity for compassion, the capacity for loving each other, which is as powerful or more powerful than the capacity to seek vengeance on other people or to fight with other people. It's all very complicated to do with the instinct, but I think that there are no practices except contemplation. Some people practice meditation. I simply practice keeping in communion with the transcendent dimension, saying, what way should we go? What should I do to help other people through my writing? Other people do it through actual service. We have carers for my husband at the moment, and one can see that their path is caring it's a wonderful thing to watch, the care they put into looking after an old man, and without any hesitation, with total devotion. That is the feminine, and that is the quality that we need to cultivate.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Banashe?
I think there's another question in the chat or in the Q&A, and someone is asking about the balance of the divine feminine and masculine in Chartres. I was also mentioning that.
Yes, well, you mentioned it and said it very clearly, because there's a wonderful marriage there, as you said, and one has the whole structure, if you like, which is the masculine, but the content with the rose windows is about the feminine. But you have the marriage of the structure and the rose windows, and it's just so beautiful. And also it was done with the absolute knowledge of how to create that harmony. They knew what they were doing, geometrically speaking, as I'm sure Jim knows, and Banafsheh as well. So it wasn't something that was just put up on the spur of the moment. It was something deeply thought out that had come from the wisdom tradition. They were bringing it through into a very bad period in medieval history when the Crusades were starting. There was great poverty, great suffering. Women's position was absolutely down at the bottom. They were treated as chattels by men. It was not a good place to be. And all that was changed by bringing in the feminine archetype, the image of the Grail legends, and the idea of the quest, that there was something to look for, something to search for. That changed the whole thing of Europe. And we saw the final thing in Wolfgang von Eschenbach's marvelous Grail legend. So it was a very exciting time to be alive, and I'm sure we were alive in other lives at that time, and we've all been brought together in this one. There's no question in my mind about that. We have been brought together to continue with this work, and I know I've been sort of guided to different people over my life, first to Jules to write the book, and many other people, to Chris Bache, who I think is listening in, and to Betty Kovacs. They're all guidance of joining us together, that we can do this work in our own way, but as a unity, working for the same end.
Absolutely. I remember you saying when we were in Chartres that to consider the image of the feminine there as Mary Magdalene, not just Mother Mary, not just the Virgin Mary, and how incredible that is to visualize on one side the Jesus, the Christ, and on the other side Mary Magdalene, and be in that kind of energy of the two connecting.
Yes, because Mary Magdalene was the daughter-in-law, and this comes alive so much in the channeled messages. I can't wait for you to read them, because there was a very close relationship. But Mary, the mother, was a very powerful figure, very powerful teacher. And Mary Magdalene had trained in Egypt, in the temples of Egypt, as a priestess of Isis. So she knew what she was doing, and she was accepted for that reason among the other women. So it was fascinating, really, absolutely fascinating. I see that David Lorimer is here too, and he's another one that 30 years ago I met, apparently by chance, but without a question was meant to be. He's been a friend for 30 years and a tremendous supporter of my work. So someone's mentioned salvation. So our salvation comes from knowing who we are, why we are here, where we're going, and where we've come from. Those 4 questions. If we can answer those, we'll be fine.
And I'd love to have you comment a little bit more about your observation a few minutes ago that the time for the goddess worship is over.
Well, a lot of people do worship the goddess, and that's fine. But I don't think we need a goddess as well as a god. We need a totally different concept of what God and goddess are, which is that they are the divine unity of the whole cosmos. They're not just a figure sticking up there that we can worship. They are something so miraculous, so huge, so stupendous that we can't really grasp it. But we are part of it. We're not separate from it. So in a way, worshipping is not quite the right mode. It's being united with it more. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So instead of worshiping a divine feminine is in contrast with the divine masculine. What you're calling for is basically a radical reformulation of
Yeah,
divinity
I
itself.
am absolutely a radical reformation. That is exactly what I am trying to put forward,
Right, right,
because it's
right,
so
right.
clear in quantum physics. If one adds quantum physics into the whole thing, which Nassim Haramein has done, um, you can see that the whole thing is absolutely sacred. The whole creation is incredibly, wonderfully, miraculously sacred, and we are part of it. We're not separate from it. We're not sinful little people down here. We are part of this divine unity, and that's what I'm trying to get across in this book. I know it's a tremendous change of thinking, because it doesn't mean kind of worshipping anymore. It means living in a way that respects the new vision.
Yeah, someone is also asking about the question of power and the extraordinarily addictive way that our culture has become obsessed with power and materialism. And the question is, how can your understanding of the divine feminine transform our addiction to power? That's a great question.
It's a great question. I don't know, have to wait and see, but I have got two chapters in my book. One is called COVID-19 and the abuse of power, which I go into detail about what that abuse is and how we have to overcome it and fight it. And the last chapter is about transhumanism, how this is something that scientific materialism has been leading to, but must be resisted with every cell of our bodies, because it will be absolutely disastrous. So can you repeat that question again, Jim, because I've forgotten it?
Well, the relationship between what you're saying in terms of the reformulation of divinity and the masculine and feminine relationship within divinity, and how you would understand it assisting us in our resistance to the addiction to power that we see around us all over. I mean, and you
Well,
mentioned
I think that
transhumanism, and that's also pertains to AI. You know, we're in
exactly.
a highly technologized world in
Well,
which the feminine doesn't appear to have any place.
it has no
How do
place
we
whatsoever.
counter that? How do
I
we
think by
deal
becoming
with it?
aware of it, this is what I'm trying to do in my book, by showing people how they've become almost hypnotized by materialism and how they need to break the spell, which is actually coming from what the Gnostics call the archons, which I do believe is a principle which is an adversary, if you like, towards humanity, which is working against us. And it's the latest thing is scientific materialism and the whole materialist scenario with Zuckerberg and Bezos and the whole lot of them. It's so utterly wrong, the path that we've been on in the
Mhm.
last century or so, because we've lost the connection with the divine. We've lost the awareness of having a soul. We've lost the awareness of what a soul is and how it's connected to the divine ground and the spirit. It's not belief and worship won't cut it anymore. There has to be knowledge of what we are. And with that knowledge, I think we can counter the spell of materialism that we're under, because it is a spell. It's an addiction, just the same way as war is an addiction. And it comes from really matter used to be the mother, so to speak. So in a way, it's searching for the mother in materialism. The more we can get hold of, the safer we feel. And we have to break the spell of that and realize we have to learn to trust rather than to fear, because our whole culture is built on fear and has been for centuries and millennia. Fear of the adversary, fear of death, fear of disease, fear of this and that and the other thing. And we've lost our trust in the divine. And if we can regain that, that would counter this materialistic trend, I think.
Well, thank you, Anne, very much for your wisdom today. I think that will bring us to a close. I want to remind everyone of the importance of making pilgrimage to Chartres, as Anne was indicating early on in her opening remarks, and several people have commented, going into that cathedral fills one with
Wonder. Oh, yes,
awe.
absolutely. Oh,
And you can feel palpably the presence of the sacred feminine. And Banafshe and our faculty seek to make that alive every year that we go there. And so we hope that as many of you who can will join us this July 6th through 12th. I've put the link in the chat box. Banafshe, why don't you make whatever final comments you would like and then close us out. But thank you, Anne. Thank you. You are indeed a world treasure. You carry deep
thank you very
wisdom.
much. So are you, Jim. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Anne Baring today. How wonderful to be with you again, and to share, to hear your wisdom and to listen to you. You certainly do extend the Gnostic way, as I was listening to you respond to Jim, the Gnostic way of opening to embodied knowledge and soul embodied knowledge. But to close our session today, everyone, I want to close with this benediction. May we embody the nurturing wisdom and the compassionate strength of the divine feminine in balance with the divine masculine. And on this Mother's Day, let us commit to mothering ourselves, to mothering one another and our precious earth, expanding this healing energy that our world is so in need of, this healing nurturance, becoming channels of love, of renewal. And may the spirit of Chartres guide us as we live, breathe, and share this sacred mothering energy with the world. Thank you so much. So much love to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Banafshe. See you all next month for our June community call, and we hope to see all of you in Chartres in July. Bye for now. Happy Mother's Day.